but also elsewhere?
Sure. So some of this might be better covered looking sort of pictorially at it with the route maps that I provided. But there are, from conversations I've had with Swansea Council and information they've kindly provided me with, there are designated areas that have been specifically designed to deal with these matters. So if we're talking specifically about car parks, we've got the 2 new car parks, the south, which is the one that's built underneath the coastal park but attached to the arena, and then there's
Laura, can I just pause there, and I will pick up one of the maps.
Thank you.
Which is standard operations. So this is for events. Can everybody see that?
Yeah, I can see that.
Is that sharing on the screen? Okay. Yeah. So these are for events that finish before midnight. And
yeah, so as we were saying, you know, every event will be addressed slightly differently, but for want of explaining things in the clearest way we can, we'll start with a basic template of how we anticipate people moving around the building, especially when they're leaving. However, for me, arrival and dispersal are so intrinsically linked because they are the movement of people and arrival and departure from their destinations. So if we start, you know, at Swansea Arena itself, which hopefully you might be able to hover your cursor over for anybody that might not be able to see. Thank you. So that's obviously the arena entrance is just there. So if we're looking at car parking, we have the coastal car park, which is currently noted as the south car park, which sits underneath the coastal park. That's been purpose built by the council and will be operated by the council. And then across the bridge, we've got what's known at the moment as the North Car Park, which has sort of shark fin appearance to the outside of it for anybody that isn't familiar with it. And then we also have various other car parks that are already in place for the city. So you've got the Quadrant Car Park, which is sort of towards the top left of this particular diagram. And then you also have Paxton Street Car Park, which is sort of bottom left. So if we start with Paxton Street, because in my eyes, that's probably one that will provide the most help for people. That covers a multitude of transport there. Not only is it a car park, it is also a coach pickup and drop off location. So those coaches will not remain there. They will literally drive in safely, drop the guests, and they will go. And they will go over to Fabian Way, where the park and ride is. But there are also there will be room for private taxi, pick up and drop off. And also, let's say the most obvious one, which is, I guess, families, parents, friends dropping off people to attend the arena. So all of that is covered by Paxton Street Car Park, but not in isolation. But it's probably the most obvious one with the easiest route of egress up into the coastal park and certainly out of it due to the sloped. You can't see it from this plan, but as you know, there is a sloped walkway from Paxton Street Car Park, which will be opened up and will lead straight up to the entrance of the arena. So for me, that's a really, really crucial route. And then the other most notable one is across, so at podium level when you have entered or exited the building, using the Copper Bay Bridge, which has been purposefully designed and built for this in order to allow easy and access and safe access to the city. So that also has a slope to it once you've crossed the other side of Oystermouth Road. And that leads obviously to your trains, taxis, right into the heart of the city centre, but also, and more notably, to the Quadrant Car Park and that little section on Wellington Street, which has also got a Hackney cab zone. So that's the black cabs, for want of another term, and it also has another coach pickup and drop off zone. So there is also bus stations around there, and I personally feel that's another really key location. And then if we were to go around back to the entrance area, that's probably the best place to go to next. There is then access, as we've discussed, there's a spiral staircase that leads down to ground level for Oystermouth Road. And my understanding is it is definitely not built yet because it is still very much a build site, that there will be a drop-off area built in that section. I can't talk too much about the exact layout and development of that, because we also have to consider that at the moment there may or may not be a hotel built in that area and how that would impact. So for me, I'm not using that as a great consideration, but I have illustrated it there on the map because that is what's been provided to me with information. So that area there would serve us, it would serve the hotel, and it would serve the LC. So it is not exclusively to us.
And the whole intention.
Sorry, Ewan.
No, apologies to butt in, but the whole intention would be for your security and for your staff to encourage people away from either the coastal park or onto Victoria Quay, away from the local residents and into those areas where there is car parking, pickups, drop-offs, taxi ranks, and however, or people walking home across the bridge.
Absolutely. We will have staff manning the exits, and then certainly for busier events, we will have other guards and or ushers or hosts dotted around. Really, for us, it's about not only sort of moving people on and getting them to where they need to go, but also just being a point of reference. So when they say, where's the bus station, or I'm a bit confused, where can my taxi pick me up, we will be able to provide that information for them at the door. However, as I'd said earlier, that all of this information in terms of the location of where things are is on our website for people, and we will continue to build and update. It's very, very basic at the moment, but it will be built on.
And the point of egress is on the opposite side of the building to where Victoria Quay is, which people can see. And then this is for events that finish before midnight, and people will be able to. We talked about Lisa. Sorry, too many L's. Lisa spoke about the VIP area, and there is a designated access and egress point. And for those events that finish before 12, who have got the VIP passes, they will be able to leave from that exit, but they will be pointed in the direction of the bridge and away from the coast, well, away from Victoria Quay. The position is slightly different when one looks at, hopefully we can all see that. This is post-midnight operations. And of course, some of the transport facilities that that you've talked about may or may not be available, and that's why there's a slightly different approach to those events that take place after midnight.
That's correct, and I think it's also important to address that you know, we don't operate the coastal park. That is not within our remit. However, we're keen to work with the local authorities and with the residents in order to prevent people that have directly come from our shows after midnight to leave via the coastal park, partly because it's not safe for them, and partly because it will create noise. You know, we're all fully aware of the potential of what could happen if people sprawl in that area. That's not something we would want to happen. So we have proposed at this stage that post midnight we would control that area with crowd barriers, and we would have guards manning those. It's also important to note that because the coastal park is public access, you know, and there will be times where ATG is not, has no shows and the building is closed, so people are able to roam around there, but they might not be associated with our venue. But should a resident need access through at any point, anything like that, everybody will be assessed and a conversation will be had at the point that they would approach to try and walk through. And 99% of the time what will happen is someone will try and go through, a guard, an usher, a host will say, where are you trying to get to? And we would then redirect them in the most appropriate way. So from that, the dispersal plan doesn't change hugely, but one significant difference is that, as you can see, there are some, I've called it gold or mustard, but crowd barriers that would be placed approximately in those locations. Until the site has been handed to us, it's going to be quite difficult to pinpoint precisely. But that would stop the majority, well, in fact, all people leaving through any other route other than the front across the bridge or down that staircase that you're hovering around there. Now, anybody that needs to get to Paxton Street car park or head that way along the Oystermouth Road, we obviously don't want to prevent them from being able to do that, But what we would suggest is that they then walk at Oystermouth Road level, skirting along the side of the road on the new purpose-built path that is not the coastal path. We would have somebody most likely at the bottom of the steps to kind of direct them in the most appropriate way, and you know, avoid any disorientation, I suppose, if they have come from that coastal park route. So there will be people based in and around that staircase area. Alternatively, again, you know, they're well within their rights to want to go across the bridge and head up that way through the city centre to get to whichever mode of transport they're seeking.
Okay, Laura, that's really helpful. Now, clearly a huge amount of work and thought has gone into this, not just your own thought, but the thoughts of the authority. You've had input from the police and from other agencies. We are some considerable months away from opening, but this is a document that you will continue to work on.
Exactly, and these illustrations that you see here are two very stark examples of pre-midnight and post-midnight. As we've said, for each event inside our arena, we'll assess our security needs, you know, even down to what stock we've got available, i.e. if it's a family-friendly show, we're probably going to have more of the kind of kids' drinks and snacks available. If it's more of a comedy gig, you know, we'll have a different range of things available for people. So in the same way that we interpret what we're doing inside the arena, that also expands to outside the arena and how we anticipate people arriving and leaving. Equally, if there are some roadworks somewhere on the road and we've got a significant amount of information ahead of time, or if a car park has had to be closed for some reason and we're made aware of that, we will try to communicate that with our guests in advance. So we have these tools available to us in order to do that.
Thank you. And Lisa mentioned the test events earlier, and that will be an important part that will feed into the dispersal policy. Absolutely.
You know, we want people to come and experience those, and we will be actively communicating with people and asking them how they found it, you know, what's their most regular route in, what's their most regular form of transport. All of that information we haven't got yet because we aren't open, but we intend to do that going forward, and those test events certainly will form a massive part of how we structure our dispersal. There's no question.
Thank you. You've dealt with a lot of the remaining parts of the dispersal policy, and I don't doubt that there will be some questions for you afterwards. I don't have any more. I don't know if there's anything that you want to say at this moment in time.
No, I think all that leaves me to say really is just that for us, as I've said, access and, you know, dispersal are so intrinsically linked. We want people to leave the area as quickly, quietly and safely as possible, whilst avoiding those key areas that people have noted and are concerned about.
And I know that Lisa has met with, she was name checked earlier, with the local residents. Have you met with the local residents?
Have I, did you say?
Yes, yeah.
Yeah, well, I think I've met with Spencer and maybe one other. So yes, I have tried to engage.
Right, and you'll continue to engage with them.
100%. You know, we're here, as Lisa said, it's an open door if people want to talk about any issues they've got going on. If there was a particular scenario that had occurred, you know, we're here to talk about it, and we will certainly continue to build all of the considerations that come forward into our dispersal plans.
Thank you. That's very helpful. Thank you. And the dispersal policy feeds into the joint operational management plan, the arena management plan, the event management plan, and the security management plan, the first three of which are required by planning and hopefully licensing, because that's a condition that we've offered. And the security management plan is a matter that you deal with as a matter of good practice, being experienced and well recognised operators.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Laura. That's all I've got. I know there are some issues that have been raised, and with the committee's indulgence, could I just ask Lee Richards to come off mute? The committee will be aware that because this is such a significant development, and it's the C word. It's the collaboration between the operator and the authority, and in fact that collaboration goes way beyond the authority. But Lee Richards is on the call, and he explained, or he said at the outset what his job title was. And there are, I think, 6 matters, Lee, that I would just like you to deal with, and I'm going to list them now, and then I'll tick them off as you deal with them, and I'll pick you up if you haven't. But there is the CCTV, so that's the collaboration between the operator and the wider coastal park, the revetment wall, rangers, car parking, park and ride, and the LED wrap around, or the LED skin around the building. If you could just, again, some on the call may know who you are, but just for the record, if you could introduce yourself and explain who you are and what your involvement is in this project.
Yes, of course. Thank you, Mr. McGregor. I'm Lee Richards. I'm the Physical Regeneration Manager for the City and County of Swansea. I'm responsible for delivery of major projects in and around the city within the council team. I've been involved in this project probably for about 8 years. So from its inception to delivery and thereafter, which I think is a very, very important point. I think it's fair to say, and just picking up on Mr. McGregor's word there, collaboration. Collaboration on this regeneration project has been extremely important and has taken place throughout the whole of this project, which is the wider Copper Bay. That extends to extensive planning collaboration and consultation with various groups and individuals, and sessions set up with a number of the groups, including the access groups and cyclists, and also the residents. And I think it's fair to say that we do very much take into account comments from residents. And I believe in a number of comments I'm about to give, I can demonstrate that. So if I may, do you mind if I turn firstly to the traffic at Victoria Quay, which has been brought up? This is part of a TRO, and as Lara was saying, when the arena was being originally developed, you will all be aware of the atrocities that took place at Manchester, Marrakesh, Nice, through the terrorism. So this scheme has very much been designed on the basis of evacuating and moving people out of the arena from the vicinity as quickly as possible. Traffic regulation orders have been put in place, as you'll be aware, quite recently. One of the traffic regulation orders is for Victoria Quay. I fully appreciate and understand, and as the residents of Victoria Quay know, as I've met them on numerous occasions, we're supportive of a traffic regulation order, and I think as Mr. Alan P. Lewis brought up, the order wasn't long enough, so we've looked to extend that to 2:30. However, as residents will know, we've also had representation from other residents in Victoria Quay that unfortunately do not want any imposition or TRO in place. So we have to balance this, and it's a process we are currently going through, but I'm hoping we'll all come to a sensible conclusion on that. If I turn to the Reventment Wall that you were talking about, again, this is an example of how I believe we can demonstrate that we've listened again to residents there. The Reventment Wall walkway has always been in existence. It's always been there. Probably not used as much as it could have been, but there are some strategic points along that wall, which are called cold drops that look out to the views in between properties. As part of the discussions that we had at the outset with the planning and with residents, they were concerned about the imposition of people looking into their residence. If Mr. Edwards is still on the call, he was concerned about the arches and people walking over the arches and throwing bottles and things down there, and also about the issues around security in this area. So what we have done, and again, this all forms part of the planning application, As part of the development, we are including a screen. So it's a two-way screen. It's firstly at the back of the Reventment Wall. There'll be a 1.8 metre high hedge behind the arena that extends beyond the arena and then into the coastal path. What that will do will try to prevent the imposition of people looking into people's residence. And equally, we are and have been consulting with residents, with a local artist, and to put in place a heritage panel at the coal drop. So this allows people, in terms of its design, to look through the installation, through the coal drop and into the arena, but equally provides a design that will stop an imposition of people looking at certain angles into people's residence home. Again, we consulted with residents, and 2, I believe, presentations were made to residents, and their comments were taken on board in its design. And it's a shame Mr. Simmons isn't on the call, because he was representing a number of the residents in the final meeting we had a few weeks ago. We've also, as part of the process, increased the CCTV coverage in and around the city and multi-storey car parks. In particular, again, addressing one of Mr. Edwards's points, we've now installed quite visible CCTV around the development, and there is a CCTV camera which will be located at the entrance to the arches. So again, we've done this in such a way as it hopefully will act as a natural deterrent, because it will be seen. And as Lara has picked up, this will link back to our Tyne Hill monitoring depot and down through into the Rangers, police, and everywhere else. In terms of Rangers, you're absolutely right. Copper Bay is a very important project for the regeneration of Swansea, and is a catalyst for future generations and also for future development in Swansea. And we hope, very much hope, and I'm sure you'll all agree, it will be a success. But we have to work, again, collaboratively to make sure it's a success. So what the council has done, it has employed 6 new staff, was in the process of employing 6 new staff. Some of those staff will be very visible during the day and will direct people in and around Copper Bay, in the parkland and in the north side as well, because please don't forget, this development isn't just about the arena, it's about the areas on the north as well. And equally, in the evenings, we will have rangers with enforcement powers that will also patrol the park areas, as Lara said, for those times where an event isn't taking place, because obviously nuisance and noise is very important to us. And we will then provide support to ATG as and when required, as part of their dispersal policy, which I think Lara has gone through in quite some detail quite recently. If I can turn to car parking and park and ride, as Lara's pointed out, as part of the design of the arena, the coach parking, you will note, is as far away from the arena as it possibly can, and it's on drop-off and collection basis behind numerous security bollards. Once they've dropped off patrons to go to the arena, they will then be directed out to the park and ride and then called in as and when required. Equally, the car parking, we've introduced 1,000 new car parking spaces on the north and south sides, and equally within the vicinity of Paxton Street and the Quadrant multi-storey, but between the 4 car parks there's almost 2,000 car parking spaces, which should adequately fulfill the requirements of people attending the arena. And equally within a 5-minute distance there's also another 1,000 spaces close by. Park and Ride at the moment operates from 7 AM to 7 PM. It will be open of an evening for the buses to hold over, and equally for vehicles attending the venue to collect through HGV or anything else also to hold over. It's important to say at this moment in time, referring back to these live documents that Mr. McGregor was referring to, we will be monitoring whether there's a necessity to open up the park and ride for the evening. and that's very much will come down to monitoring these early test events and reacting to those test events to see if there is a necessity, and equally whether there is the capacity to open those park and ride elements. We believe there is sufficient car parking in the vicinity and through public transport that may not necessitate the need to open it. But again, it all will be under review moving forward. Finally, the LED lighting and skin. Can I just say the LED lighting has always been part of this development. It forms part of the detailed planning application on 2018, and the inclusion of the lights and the LED lights contained within the design and access statement. Again, responding to residents' concerns during the consultation of planning, the design of the lights on the arena are such that they graduate around the arena and then dissipate as they get to the rear near the residents. What's really important at the moment is that we test the lights, and a number of the residents have discussed today of the flashing lights that they've seen. We wrote to the residents recently and informed them that we would be undertaking a series of tests, and I have been communicating with the chairs of the various residents, including Mr. Simmons. I think he may have gone now. And just to explain that these test events are really important, because what they will do, they will inform and guide the operation use and times of the LED use moving forward, and this will then be contained within the planning application. So please bear with us. It's a testing operation which we're undergoing at the moment, but residents' views will be taken into account and will form part of any documentation and protocols that we put in place. Have I covered everything, Mr. McGregor?
I've given you 6 ticks, so you've covered all the points that I had raised with you. That's very helpful, Mr. Richards. And I should say that insofar as the LED skin that's around the arena, that's something that's not controlled by ATG, but it's something that's controlled by the council. Have I got that understanding right?
Yes, you have. Sorry, I should have said that. Yes, the LED skin is controlled by the local authority, and as I said, as part of the testing events that are taken at the moment, we will be producing a protocol document which will include times and elements of fading that will then inform the planning decision. Sorry, not decision, but condition.
Yes, that's right, and it's perhaps yet another example of the collaboration, which is perhaps unsurprising with a development of this size, that needs to go on between various parts of Copper Bay, the authority, and beyond, and it includes the residents as well, as you've rightly said. Thank you, committee, Mr. Davis. I appreciate and. That we've gone through it in some detail. I think it's important for you to have the confidence as a committee and as an authority that this has been given a very careful thought. It's the subject of continuing consideration. It's the subject of continuing collaboration, as Mr. Richards has just highlighted. And the policies will be developed in accordance with the various permissions that have been granted, and we hope that you will be kind enough to grant today. I anticipate that there will be a number of questions. Lisa and Lara will be able to field those. Can I apologise that Claire Dixon has had to leave? She's had an urgent appointment to attend to, but given that Lara and Lisa are the field soldiers on the ground, they are perhaps better placed to deal with those. I may be able to deal with some questions, and Mr. Richards as well. There may be questions that attend to matters that are perhaps more appropriately dealt with by him. So that is all I've got to say. Again, apologies for taking it in some detail, but it is an important project. for all sorts of reasons. And as Mr. Richards said, it's a catalyst for Swansea and for future generations. Thank you.
I note that within the chat function, there have been 2 comments from Ms. Smith and Mr. Edwards, and perhaps therefore you, well, Ms. Smith first then may wish to ask the applicant those questions.
Yeah, sorry, good afternoon. It's Mr. Smith from 2 Squire Court. Yeah, it's just you mentioned about obviously dispersing via the front of the arena onto Oystermouth Road, which obviously makes sense. I assume then that you will be controlling or prohibiting pedestrians from dispersing via the 3 arches during at those particular times to stop unwanted people coming onto Victoria Quay.
I think that that's probably a joint effort between, because part of it falls out with HEG's remit, so it's probably a joint response from Lee and also from Lara. Could I start with Lee on that? I see that you've already taken yourself off on mute.
I have, Mr. McGregor. Yes, it's one of those areas that we need to monitor, if I'm completely honest. As you will understand, there will be people who reside in the marina or maybe staying in the Marriott Hotel or elsewhere, and will require access onto the marina to get to their various destinations. As I said, through the live documentation and the monitoring, I think it's a case of we're going to have to see and monitor those areas to see if there's any nuisance that does take place, and then react appropriately.
Yeah, I mean, I just think it makes sense to direct pedestrians and all down Oystermouth Road and down Paxton, and they can disperse into the marina from the Marriott, from the hotel end.
Yeah, I think. Sorry, Mr. Smith, I've cut right across you. Apologise. I mean, I think that's the intention of, and hopefully that's come across clearly from what Lara has said in relation to the dispersal policy, is to push them metaphorically away from the marina towards the city centre, where the traffic, the travel options for people to get home or where they may live, that's where they will be best placed to pick up things like buses, taxis, cars, or whatever. Lara, I don't know if there's anything that you can usefully add to what's been said.
I think really, as Lee said, in terms of monitoring these things, you know, each event's going to bring a slightly different requirement. So we will continue to monitor, and you know, our guards and our hosts that are out and about around the arena at the time of exit, you know, they're movable positions, and if we deem it necessary further down the line to reposition some of those, we absolutely will take into consideration what's been said and the feedback from that.
And then the other question that's been asked, and maybe I can pick this up, is Gareth Edwards has asked, will park and ride facilities be open until midnight and after on event nights? I think what Lee said is that that's one of the many things, I suppose, that will be considered as an output from the trial events that happen in advance of the premises opening to the public. And I can see that he's nodding, so it may be that he doesn't need to add anything else to that.
No, that's correct. I mean, there is enough car parking in the area, and with the public transport as well. It is very much down to if there is a need generated for the park and ride, then we will consider it.
Hello.
Edwards has raised his hand. Mr. Edwards?
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm having problems with my lower and raised in the hand icon. That's why I've had to do that. I don't know what's gone wrong with it. Yeah, rather than me coming in later on to ask another question regarding the same thing that Mr. Smith asked, I live arguably in the worst position together with two neighbours below me. We are literally 9.5 meters away from the tunnel, sorry. Below me, there are two people who've got jobs where they get up very early in the morning to go. Then below that, there's a young child living with his grandfather permanently. Now the thing is, with the increased footfall, which inevitably will happen at sort of, I don't know, midnight, 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning, a lot of people are going to come through those tunnels. There's no doubt. In the past, those tunnels have caused lots of problems for us here with drug taking, antisocial behaviour, go on and on. The police were called numerous occasions. We even provided video footage to the police for some unsavoury incidents down here. Now, to me, the simple thing to do from the outset is to put removable barriers across those tunnels when an event is finished, to stop people coming through the tunnels, as Mr. Smith touched on earlier on, and direct them down towards the LC if they're going that way. Why anybody would want to come through there who's staying at the Marriott is beyond me, because you would go down Oystermouth Road. Now, this to me is going to be an area where there's going to be considerable problems for us, because we live so close, but also other residents who live along Victoria Quay. Now, surely the thing to do, you anticipate there might be no problem. I'm telling you, there will be. The thing to do is to start right from the beginning, to put barriers up there with marshals on it to direct the people away, so that people will realise they can't go that way and then go in other areas. That would be a major thing as far as we're concerned, and I speak personally, because there's 3 residents are going to be massively affected by that, and of course the other side, you've got people that live at Anchor Court as well. So there's probably another sort of maybe 3 or 6 affected there. Now, this was going to be addressed to Lee Richards and Lisa Mart, and I'm just wondering what your views are on what I've just asked for.
Well, Mr. Edwards, can I interject for a moment regarding this point? Now, we're here to deal with the licence itself. Of course, there are matters involved in it which regard as nuisance, but the licence essentially is in relation to what's within that red line, and I'm sure Mr. McGregor will finish off what I'm starting, but it appears to me that the company are putting forward proposals in a dispersal policy, i.e. those, I think, was it Mr. Harding stated, golden fences, which would herd people away. Now, they're putting that as part of the dispersal. We're here effectively to deal with licensing conditions. Now, I hear what you're saying, it's a good idea, but in regards to licensing conditions, I'm not sure whether that is enforceable if this committee were to place a condition that barriers must be put. How many hundreds of yards away is that area from the front door? I don't know, but the point being, shortly, to try and please you, Mr. Edwards, I'm going to comment with regards to what's been said today, and comment in light of perhaps the company should consider amending. Well, they've already said that the policy is going to be movable and changeable and add things to it. That could be a consideration, but I'm not so sure whether or not it can be a licensable condition. Perhaps I'll leave it there, and then the company and the representatives can answer how they see fit.
I'm not sure if you were expecting me to say something now, but if you give a lawyer an opportunity to speak, they won't hesitate to miss the opportunity. There are a number of things in terms of those post-midnight events. The gold barriers. I'm not sure they're going to be gold in real life, but they were shown as gold on the plans. But there will be barriers there to funnel people away from the coastal park, as Lara has said. In relation to the tunnels, Lee has made that commitment that it's something that is going to be kept under review, certainly as part of the trial events. And that's the reason why we are doing these trial events, not only to work out how the premises themselves will operate, it gives those staff in the premises the opportunity to be able to feel their way through the premises and how things actually work on a real live basis. The dispersal policy is a live document, and it is something that will change and adapt. And in due course, as Lara said, it may involve security in other parts, or rangers or whoever they are in other parts of the coastal park and nearer Victoria Quay. And I entirely agree with Mr. Davis's comment about conditions on the license, where you're talking about an area that is out with our control and some distance away from the premises themselves. But as we keep stressing, is that with a development of this size and this nature, it is imperative that the collaboration that has gone on up to this point continues, not only up until the opening of the premises, but beyond there. And that is why we've developed the license and the policies in the way that we have.
Councillor Rowlands.
Oh, thank you. Well, I don't know. Are we going into question? Is this our opportunity to question now?
I was. My apologies. I didn't specifically draw a line in the sand. I think Mr. McGregor is. Am I correct in saying that you have now concluded your points? And yes, ma'am. In that basis, then, would you prefer in a way that members be the persons to ask the first questions?
Yes. I think so.
The chair has confirmed that members ask first. So, Ms. Chair or Ms. Rowlands? Ms. Rowlands, would you like to?
Okay, thank you. I've listened. I'd like to thank everyone for their attention to detail today, because it's certainly been very, very interesting to myself, and it's also reading through something and listening to an explanation is very different, and that does certainly help. My points have been written as everyone has spoken, so please excuse if it's a bit bitty, but I've got several questions. Do we want to go through them individually? Would that be the best way to do it?
Yes, please.
Individually, is that easier that way?
Yes, please.
Okay. I must say I've got huge concerns with regards to the police and the fact that they've got no concerns whatsoever. That does concern me considerably, and collaboration has been a word that we've heard many times this afternoon, which is something that I think is very vitally important in a development of this kind. But what really concerns me is that the police haven't spoken to the residents in the marina, and that is a huge concern of mine. So I just wanted to make that noted. I listened to the representations then from the residents, and you know, I totally understand the concerns they have. The lighting, and maybe somebody can. The lighting of the skin, then, is that something that we are deciding as a licensing committee or the planning department?
My view would be a planning matter.
Planning matter. Okay, that's fine. Then that answers that question. Okay, so my first question would be then, how far in advance are events booked?
I'll take that one. It can vary, if I'm honest. It depends on the tour scheduling, the tour announcements. So we've just announced our first run of shows, and they are going to be, they're across April, May and June. So we're looking at probably approximately, 6 months for the majority of events. For large scale conferences and exhibitions, it can be 1 or 2 years. But I do have to say that there are sometimes, as I'm sure you know from events dropping in other areas in Swansea, there are sometimes last minute events that do drop in with maybe a month's notice because it's a last minute tour announcement that we've managed to get a hold of, if that makes sense. So as much control as we can.
No, that's fine. That answers that. Thank you. The off-license sales, being until the license that's been applied for is till 2:30, and off license from 10 o'clock in the morning until 2:30 in the morning. Then I think I do need a little bit more of an explanation as to the purpose of that, because in the presentation it was said that the off license really was for more for events, for people to take them off, as you described. But I don't envisage the events that you're talking about happening at 2:30 in the morning. So maybe we could discuss that a touch more, please. I really do need a bit more of an explanation on that.
Can I, Councillor Rowlands, take some instructions on perhaps an alternative hour to restrict, and would that attend to your concerns, so that we're it restricts the hours in which off sales can be made? It's not a major part of the business, but it gives, and I apologise for mentioning the flexibility word again, but it enables the ATG to provide that facility when there are conferences or there are wedding fairs or there are food fairs. So we have a sort of, I'm multitasking here, so we've got a WhatsApp group, and let me just take some instructions and I'll come back to you on that if that's all right.
That's fine. Yeah, absolutely. And then so shall I go on with my questions, or yeah? And then so the conditions that could potentially be attached to this license, they could obviously be amended if applied for, and I think this in fact that question actually goes to the planning, so that's irrelevant. Actually, it's not. Sorry for my and then right, okay, so my next question would be is the arena going to be open to the public daily, and if so on a daily basis, then what security will be in place, and can the public stay all day then without attending an arranged event? So does that question make sense to you?
Yeah.
Basically, what I'm saying is, could people just go there all day to have a drink and come home when they need to?
Can I, Councillor Rowlands, I've had a very quick response on the off sales point. I was going to suggest an hour, but a more restrictive hour has been suggested that off sales would end at 8 p.m.
Okay.
So that's hopefully sits more comfortably with the provision of maybe a food fair or a wedding fair.
Yeah.
I actually had in mind slightly later, but I think 8 p.m. is a sensible hour. And then there's also the restriction that we've offered that I can't find the same. There's so many pieces of paper that there would be no off sales in open vessels, so people wouldn't be able to buy a pint and then wander around the coastal park. You mentioned very briefly about changing conditions on licenses, and you said, well, that's maybe more of a planning matter, but I'll deal with that anyway, because if we want to change a condition on the license that has an impact on the licensing objectives, then we would have to go through this process again. And so we would have to display notices on the premises, blue notices on the premises. It would go in the local paper. It would provide the residents the opportunity to make representations. And if we were unable to compromise or agree those representations, we would come back before the licensing committee. So it's not it's not as if you give us this now and then tomorrow we say, well, actually, we're going to change all of that. It would have to go through public consultation. And then I think your final point, that is something that is better dealt with by Lisa or Lara.
Okay, thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you.
So on a standard day with no events happening, the arena would be open to staff from 8 AM through to the end of their workday, assuming no events are happening. To the public at the moment, we're looking at the venue being open 10 AM till 6 PM. But when I say the venue being open, it's really just that level 2 foyer area, which encapsulates our box office and reception space. And there will be a small coffee shop there as well, just as you come in. We won't be offering alcohol sales during the day. We won't be offering, sit down meals. It will literally just be like any sort of theatre operation. You can come in, you can buy some tickets, you can browse, but we would be closing off the rest of the venue. Obviously, we do have small meeting rooms, so it could be that they're in use during the day, but again, they would be secured for the use of the people that were renting them, so there wouldn't be open access.
Brilliant. That answers that question. Thank you. And then, so the car parking, is that advertised? When the tickets are booked, obviously, I'd assume that this would be, the preferred car parking would be almost on the ticket as it is in other events. Is that going to be the case as well?
When somebody goes through our booking process, because the car parking isn't managed by the Ambassador Theatre Group, we won't be able to book the parking for them through our systems. But as Lara was talking about, through the website and through our CRM, we can signpost them to the one that we want them to use. And of course, we can provide them with links and how much it's going to cost and how best to book. They just won't be able to actually do the booking through our system. But we'll obviously do that in collaboration with Lee's team to make sure we have all that up-to-date information.
Okay, thank you. And
if I could just add to that, Councillor, as part of the scheme, we're introducing the VMS systems, which are the digital systems that will be extended out on Fabian Way. So as you're coming in, you'll be able to see instantly what car parks are available and how many spaces are available.
Okay, that's great. Good.
If you, Councillor, sorry, and I'm butting in,
no.
Information about there is a website. The premise is obviously not yet open. We all know that, but there is information on the website already about arriving by car, arriving by train, arriving by bus, performance information, security, safety and security, and access. And the website is probably obvious. As we get nearer to opening, as the tickets go on sale, then that information will be updated, and as the car parks open, that information will be updated. So we're lucky that we live in an age where we can have access to that information, regardless of where we live, if we're remote from Swansea.
Okay, thank you. And my final question then is with regards to the license until 2:30. Alcohol license to 2:30 for 7 days a week. So we've established that it's impossible to put an event on a daily basis. I'm sure we all understand that. But I understand that the need is there to save. To have the license in place, then to need making applications continuously, but I can see the concerns of especially the more local residents for having this permanent license in place. Is there a way around that where we don't need that 365 days of the year, and is there a way of not having that in place 365 days, but just to almost please make it a little bit more safer for the residents living in the area then, and all of the residents of Swansea? I don't know if I've put that across very well. I don't think I have.
I understand the question,
Mm.
and it's a discussion that we had in our meetings in advance of submitting the application. The short answer to your question is no.
Okay.
Because you can't. There is a mechanism where you can get temporary event notices, but that doesn't work because that's got a very limited capacity. It's not unusual for arenas or stadia, and I haven't looked at the license for the Liberty Stadium, but if you look at, we act for a number of arenas and stadiums, and they will have a 365-day license. You're not obliged to use it, but if you were to put a cap, say, on the number of events that the arena was able to host, you run the risk of missing out on opportunities to book bands or to book corporate events or to book theatre shows, and there is a number of sanctions in all of this, not least that if we abuse, or we, when I say we, it's the sort of royal we, if ATG abuse the privilege that they have got of being of running the arena, there are enforcement powers, and so there is an ability to review a license, to cut the hours back, or to put that cap on the license. But it would be wrong in our view now, and I'll deal with that at the end. It's a point that I was going to pick up at the end, to put that cap or that limit on at the moment.
Okay, thank you all for the answers to those questions. And I'm sorry if they weren't put as they were read off notes then. So thank you all.
Thank you, Councillor Morris, please.
Well, my questions are basically fired to Lee Richards, if he could answer 2 questions for me, please. He's the only one that's touched on my biggest fear, which is terrorism. And you mentioned Manchester, which is just on my wavelength at the moment. And I'm wondering, after watching a programme a few weeks ago on the Manchester bombings, where people entered there so easily, they weren't stopped by anyone, they weren't wearing masks, no one asked where they were going, and they planted bombs, and I didn't want that to happen in Swansea. We're such an open city, we can get in and we can get out of Swansea so easily. We can go north to motorway, we can go east and we can go west. So easily we come in, drop you whatever you want to do and be away. I'm just wondering if we've got any thoughts on that further to what you've already talked about. And the other thing is, we've got a problem with drugs in Swansea. Wherever we live in Swansea, our neighbours have got a drug problem. And lots of these events are actually, there are drugs going in and through them. It supports them. We're worrying about the drink, and we should be worrying about the drugs instead. And I'm wondering what sort of control we have for drugs coming in the city, or if you're going to have anyone with dogs, for instance, just we only want 1 or 2 or 3, just wandering through to identify who's got drugs and where they are. Are we thinking of that sort of control? Bridget's already answered my other concerns. There's no point going over that. It's been well and truly thought out, well and truly planned for. But I'm more concerned with what could happen. No one thought it was going to happen to Manchester, and it's happened to London, it's happened everywhere. I just wondered how safe are we in Swansea and how much we've thought about it. Thank you, Lou.
Thank you, Councillor. Yes, I sympathise with your comments, absolutely. And the control and design of the arena has been such that we disperse of patrons from the arena as quickly as possible. And as you will note, and has been shared with you today, there is limited drop-off areas in and around the front of the arena. I'm sure Lisa and Lara can comment on what happens when you get inside the arena in terms of control with the mag and bag areas, and I'm sure that they can pick up on that for you. But I can say as an example that the disbursement of coach pickup points are now around the city. where they were originally in front of the arena, to make sure that people are dispersed, as Lara has explained, over the bridge and as far away as the arena as possible. There is limited taxi areas in front of the arena, and I'm posted again outside and for existing ranks. And equally, reinforcement has gone into the design of the arena and of the car parking areas, such that should an act occur, we've tried to design as far as is possible any address to that. And another example would be as you enter the arena into the service yard area, large bunds of earth being created, and within them there will be security bollards that, should an event like happen or the terrorism act in Nice, then there's a control mechanism there that would hopefully prevent and deter that. So in terms of design, I think everything that we possibly could have thought of has been incorporated as far as possible. And I'm sure Lisa and Lara will now comment on what happens when you get inside the arena.
Councillor Morris, a couple of things from me, and then we have our ATG head of risk and security, who's sat quietly in the background and will hopefully be able to help you. Just a couple of thoughts from me on the point that you raised, and you're absolutely right to raise it, is that within our dispersal and wider security policy, is that we, and I think Lara mentioned this earlier, is that we will work with the council, the rangers, the police, and counter-terrorism security advisors, and they all feed into. No one person has the key to the information, and it's important. And apologies to say it again, but it's important that all those different agencies collaborate together so that venues like ours, and indeed venues across the city and across the country, have best access to best available information when they're running events like this. And there is also something which you may or may not be aware of, called Protect Duty. It was a consultation that was run by the government. That consultation has now concluded, and the outputs from that are awaited. But it's another thing that, and it's a consultation that probably arose from the awful scenes that happened in Manchester. So not only are we looking at trying to improve what we're doing, but central government are trying to, or are looking at improving the measures that venues like ours have to have in place to address particularly the concern that you've got. But rather than just so you hear a slightly different voice and not just mine and Lisa's and Lara's, could I just ask Paul LaFan, have we still got Paul on the call?
Yeah, I'm still here.
Paul, so just very quickly, and bearing in mind time and everything that's been said, just who you are, and then to attend to the question that Councillor Morris has asked.
Of course. Yes, I'm Paul LaFan. I work for ATG in capacity of risk and security. So I oversee security for our global venues, not just the UK. And I think between Lee and Ewan, they've sort of touched on the key parts there around environmental design, hostile vehicle mitigation, and design and build, and security by design in the first instance. And then similarly, as a business, we look at counterterrorism in a number of sort of ways and facets around preparedness, training, etc. Ewan touched on there the Protect Duty, which I'm sure you are aware of, following Martin's Law and the MEN attacks. We as a company have been heavily involved in that consultation and have fed into it on a number of different levels. So as a business, we're very much aware of it, and we take the training of it very seriously. So to the point, once you get past the doors, all of our teams undergo a level of counter-terrorism training, which is proportionate to their roles and what they undertake within the buildings. So that is in place, and as well as that, we will have additional essentially preparedness plans around what happens in the event of attack. So evacuations, dynamic lockdowns. So it's something we are incredibly aware of, and again, to coin Ewan's probably most used word on this call, is the collaboration between parties is incredibly important, and I'm sure that will feed into our radio contact with the rest of Swansea and the Rangers, etc., so we understand what the dynamic threat is and have greater situational awareness when we're operating in the event of a dynamic or marauding attack.
Thank you.
the last admission time for an event, if you had a really big event going on, and it's going on until 2 in the morning, what time would be the last time somebody would be allowed in?
That's a very good question. And if you're attending an event that's on until 2 in the morning, then it would be a ticketed event. And so firstly, the point is that you wouldn't be able to get in without a ticket. And I don't know the answer to that. And Lisa has got her hand up and she will deal with that.
Hello. Yes, it's just to say that although the event is happening later, it's still considered by us a live entertainment stage event. So we're not a club, we're not a bar, we're not a place that people can just freely come and go as they wish. So they would still have to arrive with a ticket, they would still have to be admitted within the appropriate time frame. We do tend to rely on the event organisers. They tend to have a late comers point in place. But I would imagine at that time of the morning, we would put a cut-off in place. If we didn't put a cut-off in place, what we would say is once you'd arrived at the venue and you left again, you wouldn't be allowed to come back in. It's quite a standard rule because we don't want to encourage people to be nipping outside, hanging around the area and coming back in. So you kind of have to get your head around, although it is much later, it would be the same organisational principle as visiting a theatre for a show that happened at 7:30 at night.
So what time would that be?
I didn't catch that comment, I think.
So what time are we talking about? Because I asked for a specific time.
I'm afraid I can't give you a time because it's, like I say, it's specific to the organiser. So sometimes when you go to a theatre event, they don't allow latecomers in at all. So if you arrive after 7:30, they don't let you in. Sometimes they have a latecomers admission that happens half an hour in because it's an appropriate time in the performance. So it's performance specific, but it would be risk assessed in the same way as all the other parts of the event management plan would be.
My concern is that people coming by road or sometimes by rail may be delayed through no fault of their own and may bought tickets, well, they would have obviously bought tickets for the event that they come into, and then they could be turned away and that could cause some aggravation, and this is what I'm trying to establish.
I see. That's very event specific, and that's something that happens in all of our venues, as you can imagine, especially in central London when people are travelling in to make start times. Like I say, it's absolutely, it's the organisers, the producers of the event that make the rule as to when latecomers can attend. But, you know, standard, we try and get them in at the best possible point if we can. We try and be as flexible as possible.
Thank you. The other thing I wanted to ask you about was movement of bottles. Because clearly you're going to have a lot of bottles, and I know from family I've got that live in the marina that moving bottles can be a huge disruption for people living locally. And I'm just wondering where you would be moving your bottles around and if you have a time frame for doing that. No.
So it's something, so Lara, have we put a specific time frame in our document so far?
We haven't documented this yet for the purpose that we're still in conversations with our contractors who will be collecting our waste, as it were. However, what I would say is it probably hasn't been shown on any of the plans that we've shown today because we're specifically talking about dispersal. But to put your mind at ease, our loading bay area has close to there an enclosed area where all of our refuse is kept. So from a purpose of our staff, for example, filling bins, that will be enclosed, so the noise will not travel. So any of the noise that I think that you're referring to, so do correct me if I'm wrong, is purely from a collection basis, which hopefully the wall that Lee has spoken in detail about the way it's been built, any noise that would disperse out of that, so we're talking at ground level, would be captured by that. But also we can look at collection times and arrangements. We're just not quite at that stage yet to have those conversations with the contractors.
Well, I think we need to establish a time so that we can give the residents some comfort that at least they're going to get a night's sleep. So that I know that when I've done other committees, we've given a time frame for the emptying of bottles and the time frame for the movement of bottles. Clearly, you're of the opinion that moving the bottles within the perimeter isn't going to make a noise, but moving them when they're being taken away, that could disturb people. And what I'm asking you is there a possibility that we could agree a time that would give some sort of comfort to the neighbours?
Can I have a discussion, Councillor Matthews, on my multitasking again on my WhatsApp group with Lisa and Lara, because I think what you're talking about is bottling out. So somebody going from within the premises to a big bin outside, tipping them into a bin, and I agree, it does cause a noise, and I've suffered from that before in the past. But let me just have a discussion, and we'll pick this up as we go along, and certainly before you retire.
Okay. And the other thing is we've got 6 new people starting, new staff, some of which would probably be rangers from what you've said. What times will they be working to? Will they be working till sort of 3 o'clock in the morning to help with the dispersal of people? Or are we talking about them just working normal sort of ranger hours?
At the moment, Councillor, the normal hours will be till 11 p.m. However, on those events that will go later, then it's by agreement with ATG, and if they require additional assistance, then we will assist.
And it will be agreed with the rangers or whatever they're called.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Thank you for that. It's 3 o'clock.
Councillor, very quickly, I've got an answer to your question about bottling out. Is that all waste bins are within the building, so any bottling out happens inside the building. What we can't commit to, and this is perhaps more of a planning matter than it is a licensing matter, is when our waste is collected.
So you can guarantee that the bottles are not going to be a nuisance to the neighbours?
The bottling out, tipping from a bin that's by a bar into a refuse bin, that all happens within the curtilage of the building, and I'm hopeful that Lisa and Lara are going to be nodding at me, saying that I've got that right. Have I got that right?
That's correct. It's been designed in such a way that there are doors and walls between the outside of the building and the inside of the building, ensuring that our bins are safe, because obviously we would have a concern anyway about ensuring that any of our waste is kept safely. So then at the point that somebody would come to collect them, those doors will be opened and the bins would be wheeled out. But in terms of our staff, I suppose, throwing waste into those larger refuge bins, that will happen inside walled and doored areas. I hope that kind of answers the question.
The chair raised the 3 o'clock deadline we referred to earlier. I can update us now that our officer has additional time so that we can.
Oh, you should.
That we can carry on. I see that PC Hancock has his hand up, and I propose to go to him next. Mr. Lewis, I know that you have your hand up. Mr. Lewis, if I were to speak before you, because I presume that Mr. McGregor will have to take instructions on what I say, and then while you then are putting forward your further representations, those instructions could be sought, thereby resulting in perhaps an earlier resolution. Is that an appropriate way forward? Perhaps
are you speaking to me?
And to everyone really, but you're involved, yes, Mr. Lewis, but I would propose to move to PC Hancock first, because I think his comments are going to relate to matters we've just heard about.
Well, I would just like to put on record that my hand has been up for probably half an hour.
As has PC Hancock, but as we said, the members were going to give their comments first.
And I'd like to put it on record that I am not here tomorrow afternoon. I will not be available tomorrow afternoon.
This is the basis now. If we move forward, it's possible that we conclude today, just as an update to that. If we don't, I'm advised that the members are available tomorrow morning. But let's see what Mr. PC Hancock has to say. PC Hancock.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, just to try and clarify some of the comments and issues that have been raised. To say that the police have had no concerns in relation to this matter is wholly inaccurate. The numerous concerns that we've had have been addressed in the previous meetings and site discussions that I've had with the applicant. This relates to issues regarding counter-terrorism, and we've all gone through the dispersal policy, etc. And it's actually helped to build the operating schedule to get to a position where we are now. So that all those concerns have been addressed at that stage. We and I have had to consider this application on its merits in relation to promoting the licensing objectives. If we consider crime and disorder, for example, I'm sure Mr. McGregor would have been the first one to take issue if I'd have come up with crime and disorder statistics relating to a licensed premises that isn't even complete yet. Whilst I accept there are issues of antisocial behaviour within the marina and the wider area, they are historic issues that are not and have not been affected by the building of the arena. Now, whilst I accept there may well be antisocial issues going forward, I hope I've outlined in my previous submissions how we now have plans in place to hopefully deal with that, and we will deal with issues as and when they arise in the usual sort of communication channels that we've got open. I would like to sort of say, you know, the operating schedule, and we've mentioned the operating plans. They are very, very detailed plans. The management plans are very detailed, and they will be event specific. So we will be able to act on issues and hopefully try and resolve them. And it will, like any other licensed premises, will be subject to the same robust enforcement programs that we've got with any other licensed premises within the city centre. So yeah, that's it for me. Thank you.
There are, well, Mr. Lewis, would you like to give your comments now then?
Thank you. First comment really is to the chairman. Point of clarification. Councillor Morris asked the question about the LED lighting, whether it was a licence issue or planning issue, and I think it was stated that it is a planning issue. Well, I would like to refer everyone back to Spencer Simmons's talk, where he stated that light is part of the licence application. He mentioned light trespass is a public health issue, and I believe Craig Davis actually agreed with him. Now, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe the light issue was to be included in the licence.
Well, Mr. Lewis, the licence is regarding the licensable activity. The use of the lighting, if in terms of advertising, I'm unsure. When I say unsure, I don't think it is something enforceable by the licensing. Very much like the example I gave earlier with regards to the fencing. It's outside of the remit of the internals of the building, which this specific licence we're here to deal with is. So therefore,
it causes a nuisance. It's part of one of the 4 objectives.
Yes, and that was a point clarified earlier by 4.1516. Sorry, 2.1516 and 2.20 and 21. It is falling in with objectives, but with regards to licensing points, you heard comments earlier, and I'm perhaps speaking, Mr. McGregor would probably say this, the testing of the lights are in infancy. I think, I'm not sure.
So we are guinea pigs, are we?
Mr. Lewis. So yes, still testing these points, and it's going to be something that's developed further. It's unrealistic that it be applied to the licensing conditions today, whereby, I say this is my view, but it's not for me to actually make a decision in any event. Perhaps Mr. McGregor may wish to put his view on the point.
Yes, so a couple of things from me, and apologies. The first is that the lights are not controlled. The LED lights around the building, the wrap around the building, are not controlled by us. They are controlled by the council. The second point is that it is dealt with in planning. The third point is one that Lee made earlier. It is that they will be tested, and that's one of the reasons. That's one of the things that will be tested in relation to the trial events that are taking place. And the fourth and final point is that if there is an issue with the lights, there are powers that, at a very simple level, I'm not an electrician and I've never installed an LED light display before, but they could probably be dimmed, and they could ultimately be the subject of enforcement action. But it's something that is not in our control, but it is part of the, and again, I keep mentioning it, but it is part of the collaborative approach between the council and ATG as an operator.
Right, I would like to comment or repeat what Mr. Richards said. Councillors, please bear with us until the protocol document has been completed. I'll just point that out. So, councillors, you've heard what I've said, you've heard what other people have said. We are extremely concerned about this lighting issue. It is part of the licence because it is the arena. It's a health issue, it's a nuisance issue. There are other things which I would like to go on to now, if I may. As Mr. Richards knows, I've got a thing about privacy. We had a number of photographs sent today with views overlooking towards Victoria Quay. One of the photographs shows directly into a bedroom. I'm just wondering whether that's a privacy issue. The arena people are taking photographs straight into our bedrooms. Okay, you have a look. I think we were given it this morning. There was a number of photographs sent over, and one of them looks straight into one of our bedrooms. So I want to know what's happening with that. Lee, could you please tell me, I have sent you emails, yet to get a response, concerning the 1.8 metre hedge. Please can you tell me, when you install it, what will the height be?
Hi, Alan.
Hi.
I'll come back to you on that. I can tell you it's a mature hedge.
Thank you.
It's not going to be, you know, a metre or so. It's as tall as it. What I'm told is that it'll be a mature hedge with the best chance of its survival in the environment. So once I get clarification on the height of that, I'll share that with you. But it will be a mature and as close to its finished height as possible. Okay,
because at the moment, by the way, if you can't see, I can see everything. I can see the VIP lounge entrance. Please, councillors, look at the photographs and look to see where we are. Privacy is a big issue. It needs to be protected at 1.8 metres before we start. Otherwise, we have the possibility of thousands of people looking at us through into our bedroom windows. The council knew fully well where we were when they started to build it. As far as the rangers are concerned, will they have scope outside the garden area and the arena area? Will they be patrolling Victoria Quay?
The rangers are citywide and include all of the Copper Bay area as well. Yeah.
Right, lovely, thank you. I think I will leave it at that. I do thank you for your time, councillors. Been very informative. I think you've given some very good questions. I have grave concerns, as you can probably be aware. This meeting has gone on for a very long time, and as I say, I think the licence should be withheld until this protocol document has been studied, and I do please ask you to study the document that I was refused access to during a meeting. Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Lewis. Yours and any other representatives' comments will be taken into consideration by the members. Mr. McGregor and your team, just a few points from myself. I think we're all aware that there currently isn't a DPS in place. Is the way forward that look for the license to be granted and vary later for a DPS?
Yeah.
I was just going to chance my arm to see if a name could be put to the job now. But
we will make an application to add a DPS, and it will be Lisa, or I anticipate, I'm putting them forward without having asked them, but it will probably be Lisa or Lara. But it's not uncommon to make applications like this without a DPS.
In relation to, you've hit the nail on the head once already, but in relation to the 8 PM off sales. Will there, obviously we've heard comments from the representations, and it's been put forward about what I call the gold bridge, as you said, may change. Would there be consideration in the dispersal policy with regards to a means of closing off the 3 arches? Can that be put as a consideration to be looked at? Now, in relation to the closing off of the park and the rear towards the VIP and then across above those 3 arches, can there be consideration again as to additional signage for persons to be present to educate that there is alternative routes? I had a comment which Mr. Lewis has touched upon in relation to the screening, i.e. the planting. Obviously, Mr. Lewis has referred to the photographs which show, I forget the height of, is there a steel barrier before the planting at that final wall by Victoria Quay? How tall is that?
1.4 metres, so there's a handrail and then the planting of 1.8 metres behind that.
It's not something that I heard mentioned today. However, it was mentioned as a security or a health danger, if you like, for the members of the public walking on the area as part of the representations that they thought persons could fall over. But does that fence run the length of that wall?
Yes.
Yes, it does.
And then there is going to be planting afterwards between that fence and that heritage wall?
That's correct.
What is the view, again, sorry, I think we touched upon it earlier, in relation to the late entry? Not in a sense of the events, as we've heard earlier, but in the sense of persons purely attending, because I think this was a representation commented earlier, purely persons attending at the site for alcohol consumption, not shows. Would there be a late attendance for that? Or in fact, would there be capacity for persons just to attend, use it as a pub effectively?
I think my answer to that question is that if you haven't got a ticket, you're not coming in. And I think there was a concern. Lisa and Lara, hopefully, nod your head if I've said the right thing. I think a concern was made right at the start about people just using it as a pub. And that's not the intention of the development of the arena. And when I say if you haven't got a ticket, you're not coming in. If you're if you're not attending an event at the arena, it's not there to be run like the Dog and Duck or the Red Lion or whatever else it is. It's an arena that is providing specific events within within that space.
Was re-entry considered, and could that be, or no re-entry, could that be considered as a condition to be put forward?
It is, and I'll need to take instructions on that about a entry, no re-entry condition, say for people who are leaving to smoke. But I can speak to Lisa and Lara about that, and I might need 2 or 3 minutes in which to do that.
Okay. In relation to the bottles, ordinarily we would have liked a condition for not to move them after certain hours, but it's noted that you say that it's internal. I wouldn't expect the collection companies, the refuse companies, to be coming extremely late, but could it be considered for a condition for no, what do we call it, bottling out? Yes, an early morning condition, so that the bottles aren't taken from the internal to the external in the twilight hours. Could that be just stopping the nuisance from that point for the residents?
I don't want to feel to be obstructive, because I understand the point, and I think that ATG are sensitive to the concerns. We will be reliant on when our refuse is collected and the arrangements that we have with the refuse business. But I'm presuming that across the city, and there are probably agreements in place with those that do collect the refuges, that they don't do so before a certain hour or do so after a certain hour.
8 o'clock in the morning usually.
The chair's view would be 8 AM and no earlier than 8 AM.
No.
But something to be considered. That's our reasons to take your views. Now, a provision for an out of hours contact for the residents. Whether that could be considered if there were, obviously normally there would be a police matter, but if there were other issues, then perhaps provision for those local residents to be able to contact.
Okay.
I don't know if the licensing officers have any other views. I think I've covered all of the points there. Yeah. Have you, obviously you put forward the 8 PM no off sales.
Yeah.
In the information that's been provided today, have any other possible recommendations or conditions could be put forward by yourselves? Have anything else come to the forefront that could assist?
John Kirksey says.
I will take instructions on the points that you've raised, Mr. Davies, and I just see that Mr. Hancock's put something in the chat that says licensed premises in the city have a condition of no emptying of glass bottles between 2300 and 0800 hours, and so I'll need to speak to Lisa and Lara about that. I don't want you to be left thinking that we are not open to suggestion or negotiation, but a lot of careful thought went into the drafting and development of the operating schedule, and so there's nothing else in terms of conditions on the license that I can think that need to be changed. We've obviously offered the condition in relation to off sales, which hopefully attends to that. It hopefully goes without saying. I've never understood why people say that and then go on to say it, but that a lot of the comments that have been made by the residents will inform the event management plan and the documents that sit within that, because we are acutely aware of not only their presence but also the concerns that they've got.
Other premises on the arena have got towns with regard to the bottle emptying.
Yeah.
If they're not, it's better if we can work with them to get it. But if they're not, it may be something we would have to put in as condition. Well, I would rather work with somebody who can.
Well, Officer Peter Hancock sets out, this open to everyone, that there's an embargo of 11 PM to 8 AM for emptying the bottles in the event.
But what they're saying is that if they contracted turns up at 11:30 to take the bottle for whatever reason, or 7:30, they would let them go. And that doesn't seem fair on the other premises that are in the arena that have got to stick to a timetable.
Yes, and of course that's what we're trying to work to. Mr. McGregor, I think the niche point they were going to say they have is that it's internal, rather than the other bars would be external. What about a condition whereby those, I don't know what the doors are like, whether there's roller shutters or big doors that open and close into the underground area, that they are closed during all rebottling, or bottling out. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've almost got through this without avoiding those dreadful words. I'm struggling to hear the councillor when you were talking to her, but are you able to give me sort of 5 minutes? And it may be that people need a comfort break, but I'm also conscious that we're coming up to the sort of witching hour of 3:30. If I can have just a couple of minutes with Lisa and Lara, and then I can come back to you on those points.
Yes, of course, because the next stage then would be well, for your final comments. Yeah.
No, so 10 minutes. Mr. McGregor wants to speak to Lara.
Yeah. 10 minutes is fine. Yeah, and we can all have a cup of tea or something.
Can I interject, please? I posted a message about 10 minutes ago. Unfortunately, I don't like leaving meetings prematurely. I did have a few more questions, but I would like to say before I leave, obviously, if there's any possibility of me rejoining the meeting tomorrow, I'm available till about after 12, that's 12:30 PM. I would like to thank Rachel Loosmore in particular for helping me solve a few problems I did have with regard to the team setup. I thank her for that. I also would like to say to Lee Richards and Lisa Martin in particular, I hope that we have a good relationship going forward. I know you've made a lot of promises, and we have got real concerns, and I can see problems, as you probably can. And I look forward to working with you both, and obviously having these regular meetings so that if and when the problems do crop up, we can come to a good mutual agreement how to solve them. And thank you all to everybody that I've spoken to. It's nice talking to you and meeting you and putting faces to names. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Edwards.
Thank you. Bye-bye.